Well, Jonah, incendiary language and vows of retaliation from the Kremlin. The Kremlin says that these sanctions are unlawful and that they regret that the United States has imposed additional sanctions. Bear in mind that the United States imposed sanctions already against Russia over its incursion into Ukraine and annexation of Crimea in 2014. Now the Kremlin is saying that these additional sanctions are a sign of, quote, Washington's aggressive policy, and that they will destroy diplomatic relations with Russia. But the Kremlin is also saying that it's unclear if American President-elect Donald Trump will endorse these sanctions. They're asking, obviously they have a glimmer of hope that perhaps he will not. The Kremlin is also asking the question as to whether or not or if these sanctions could be effective when Obama is leaving office in another 3 weeks. Now, the Kremlin is saying that right now President Putin is determining exactly what the response will be, but that, quote, the retaliation will be adequate. Last week, President Putin said that he hopes to meet with Trump, and when he does, his #1 priority will be to work on improving the relationship between Russia and the United States because, quote, things couldn't be any worse. Things just got worse, Jonah.
Yeah. Well, for further analysis, after Natasha Ghoneim in Moscow there, we ping back to Washington to talk to Anna Borshchevskaya. She's a fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Many thanks for joining us as Natasha Ghoneim, our correspondent in Moscow, was pointing out there. Things have just got worse. We've been saying for a long time that relations between Russia and the United States couldn't get any worse. They just have.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Well, look, first, I think these sanctions announced by the Obama administration are a step in the right direction. We have seen reports for many months that Russia has been interfering in elections, and frankly, this response comes in many ways too late. That said, there are many questions about just what effect these sanctions are really going to have. Perhaps it could, at this point, simply be symbolic. That said, it's still an important statement to make.
Well, one of the biggest questions, of course, is how the Kremlin is materially likely to respond to all of this. Perhaps either wait out the 3 weeks for a new administration, which it knows is likely to be more sympathetic to the Kremlin and to Mr. Putin, or, as of course has been the case in the past, immediate tit-for-tat responses to these diplomatic expulsions, or worse.
Well, I think at this point it seems that the Kremlin is signaling that they are more likely going to wait, unlike what they've done in the past. At the same time, you know, look, if you look at the Kremlin's past responses, for example, the response to the Magnitsky Act, the Kremlin's response was despicable. They banned Americans from adopting Russian orphans, which was neither proportionate nor appropriate by any standard. But it seems that in this case, the Kremlin is biding their time, and they're more likely to try to wait and see what will happen with President Trump.
And indeed, that is the question, isn't it? What will happen with President Trump? Do you imagine that relations will improve between Russia and the United States under President Trump?
I think this is still an open question, despite many of Trump's statements on Russia about signaling to want to have some sort of a reset. The fact of the matter is, I think Trump will discover that running for president is one thing, being president is something else. In the past, every American president, Democrat and Republican, tried to improve relations with Russia, had one form of reset or another, and it never really worked out, which tells you a lot about Russia itself under Putin, more than anything else. And finally, of course, Trump himself is unpredictable, we're waiting to see what his policy are. He doesn't have a strategy on Russia at this point just yet, so I think it's really too early to tell.
OK, Anna Borshchevskaya, we'll leave it there, a fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Many thanks for your time.